So let's talk about this strange idea of designing a religion. Not just as an offshoot of another religion, but taking parts of every single religion in the world and combining them, and including other things from scientific thought, philosophy, from literature, from anything, art, and making a truly worldwide religion with perhaps a variety of different faces on it, because a lot of things in religion aren't really that core to the doctrine. They're just a tradition, based on that particular place where it developed, and are kind of irrelevant, really. So the roles I can imagine you would want people to be involved is experts in every other religion that exists. Whether that religion even still exists. So like Zoroastrianism, does that still exist? I think it does, actually. It's like one of the oldest religions. And also including cross-cultural anthropologists, people who are interested in cross-cultural religious studies, people interested in psychology, history, and design a religion. It frightens me, the idea of making a world government, right? But having certain cultural values be shared across the whole world might be kind of handy. Like, let's not cut up the genitals of children, and let's not kill everybody from some other religion. So even this syncretic religion should not be focused on damaging people who happen to follow another religion. I don't think that should be the goal. Although, some of the things in the religion will actually be directly contrary to other religions. Like, a lot of religions are very male-dominated. And I don't think that that's a good idea. And I think that we don't have to ignore that men and women exist, but that we don't have to have rigid roles for gender. I think that's kind of bullying and kind of asshole thing to do. So that does put a synthetic religion with those values in conflict with many others. But really, it's only a conflict if the other religion has a problem with it. Because we don't have to go attack most religions. Now, it's true that if a religion's going to attack other people, then you need to defend yourself. And I will mention Islam as part of this, is actively speaking, they're the most anti-other religion that's going on right now. The other religions also are anti-other religions, but usually not quite as active. I don't think there's a lot of Mormons actively going around killing people for their beliefs, although it is interesting to note that they get recruited heavily by the CIA. And I grew up with evangelical Christianity, and evangelical Christianity is actually common in the higher levels of the military and intelligence community, because I had some contact there. So you can't really call Christianity a religion of peace either, if it is teaming up with one of the most violent nations, actively violent nations in the world, that by far has more military bases outside its country than any other. So it's a tough one. You'd like to be accepting of anything, but some things are not really acceptable. Like, I think even within Islam, there's conflicts over whether child marriage is acceptable. I don't tend to think it is. I see it as child abuse. I mean, I think marriage is a questionable idea anyway, but that's a different topic. But if a little girl, it's usually little girls, can't consent to sexual activity, how the hell are they supposed to consent to marriage? You know, even with their parents' permission. I don't know how hardcore to be on that. if 16-year-olds want to hook up and think that they're going to be around forever and as a relationship, fine, they're delusional in 90% of the cases. Or they're a wonderful love story. I don't know. But I know there's some limit there. And I know that in Islamic culture in some places, it's a common practice to rape young boys. I know a lot of people, when they focus on things like sex trafficking and sexual abuse, they only care about women as victims, but men are victims too. And they don't talk about it. Nobody cares. It's kind of a bummer, really, that men are so worthless in society that nobody really gives a shit about them. They're pretty much slaves. That's true, especially in industrial countries, but really, the word slavery, I could use it in a lot of different ways, and I do realize I use it quite a bit, and I understand that, like many other words, its use is polluted, and it could mean many different things, Depends on the context, I suppose. So what else with making religion? One fun thing to think about is rituals. I'm listening to an audiobook on Hinduism because I haven't checked into Hinduism for a long time. And Hinduism is actually pretty cool. They got lots of cool gods and temples and stuff like that. It's all made up shit. So I don't know how seriously it's taken among Hindus as far as like a god actually existing or something. And there's a lot of things about it that's just kind of bullshit. But I find some parts of it attractive, as I listen to this book, and I'm reminded of other things. But really, I've studied more Hindu philosophy than actual Hinduism. So I'm actually really ignorant about the practice of Hinduism as a religion. And I know a lot more about schools of thought. And that's just a completely different thing. In fact, most people in their own religion know nothing about the philosophy of their own religion. They don't know about its doctrine or history. They just know that it's what everybody else does. And they want to be part of the group, and so of course they do that. And that's normal for them. Great, I guess. Except that's really shows lazy thinking. But whatever, it works out for them. And so it's not like I'm going to go tell somebody who follows the religion of dominance around them that they should break away from that, because they'd be kind of dumb to do so, in a way. Even though I did it. But I had to, because I didn't believe it. It was bullshit. And the kind of, I would have had to have spent my life lying. And they didn't kill me because of it. I didn't grow up in that kind of culture. But I lost my family, which was pretty hard. And I lost my connection to that whole way I was raised. That entire community. Because, Christians stick together a lot. Like, you used to see in the Yellow Pages, that was a directory of phone numbers for those of you who are young. You used to see like a fish symbol on an ad. Just two curved lines overlapping to make a little fish in a tail. And that would indicate we are Christians. And that would attract other Christians to do business with them. And I always find that a little offensive. So I would avoid those businesses. Because I don't think that people should only be economically relating with, or preferentially economically relating with people who share their delusional spirituality. Same for Judaism or Islam or anything, Buddhism, whatever. I would like us to live in an economy where we just do a lot of trade. And I I like that where I live now, there is actually some religious diversity. It's not super wide. It's not like it's India or something. But you know, nobody cares. There's Mormons around. There's Seventh-day Adventists. There's Jehovah's Witnesses. There's Protestants. There's Catholics. I don't think there's anything Jewish I've heard of anywhere around here, but there's a whole town over there a long ways. I've never been to it, where a bunch of Jews moved there because they were being persecuted in Spain. And so they left. For a while they had to pretend they were Catholics. So that's kind of interesting. So a new religion, a syncretic religion, we have to actually make some tough decisions about how hardcore is it. Well, first, I think it should be very hardcore to enter. I mean, you have to really make some very, very tough social contracts. And it should be easier to enter into the general church than to enter into religion, than to enter into one instance of the church. In other words, you have the general law at the higher level, and then you have your more specific flavor, your cultural decisions, your focus, a lot of stuff that isn't, you know, law from God. None of it is. It's social agreements, but they have very specific other social agreements. And those could vary widely, which is really great, because that could be one of the powers of the church. The religion, is that it allows for many kinds of churches. You could have a Hindu church. You could have a Buddhist church. You know, you could have a Taoist church. I don't know that you could have an Islamic church. Too much of Islam is completely contrary. And Christianity is questionable because I know a lot about Christianity, so it's kind of a complicated answer, and even Christians don't know what I'm talking about, most of them, because they just say they're Christian. They're not really Christian. Even Christianity is not Christian, right? It's Paulism. It's Pauline Christianity. And it's been edited and revised over, you know, a couple thousand years. And then the people in practice don't actually follow it. You know, all the religious leaders are corrupt hypocrites. Not all of them, sorry. In general. Because they're people taking advantage of other people and using religion to do it. Well, this church could avoid some of that. But the point is, there could be a great amount of diversity and focus in individual church group. There could be, especially in the beginning, things that we wouldn't even call a church. They would really be at the family level. And I think that makes the most sense, is that people form families that follow this as a practice, then they combine with other families, and perhaps, I mean, I don't know at what level you call it a church. You know, if there's two families, can they form a church? Well, what does it mean to be a church? We certainly don't need to focus on the actual building. No building should be necessary to have a church. And there certainly shouldn't be any mega churches and spectacles and fucking heroic leaders. I think the leaders of the church should be anonymous. Of the religion. And the leaders of a church should be known to their flock. And really, I don't think that even a church should really announce itself as existing. And they could still have, you know, camping trips, gatherings, social media schedules, and connect up with each other and match their young people up with people within their church or other churches for marriage. I don't mean match them up like against their will. I mean introduce them, see if they like each other. Because marrying outside the church should be actually controversial and a bad idea. Certainly growing up Christian, I was told that you shouldn't really get married with non-Christians, and that does make sense, you know. And Islam's really harsh about this, where they'll marry outside of Islam, but they're going to marry and they're going to recruit that person. Like Muslim guys marrying non-Muslim women and then taking their lives over is actually an evangelism strategy. bad idea to marry a Muslim guy. And I don't know if it's any better to marry a Muslim woman, because, and I guess it depends on what kind of Muslim you are, really. Just like with Christians, there's Muslims who, for them, it is just a set of rituals, a style, some stuff. Maybe they pray, but they're not actually hardcore into it. And so I don't want to paint Muslims with all the same brush at all, and I'm not actually anti-Muslim, a person who's Muslim. I've hosted them in my home, they're fine. I've hosted them at parties a long time ago. I had a bunch of guys from Yemen, or Oman. I think it was Yemen. Yemen, Oman. Fun to say. And they came to a party at my house, and I was so impressed, because I had been teaching computing to them in a class, because that's what I was doing. And so I invited a bunch of these foreign students who were ESL students, there to improve their English or learn it at all. And I was actually teaching computing to them, not English. It was a very fun job. Anyway, I invited some of these guys to my parties, or people to my parties, and these were all guys, the Muslims. And what I was impressed with is they brought beer, because they don't even drink beer. Those guys didn't anyway. Muslims at large will break the law all the time, their own religious law. I don't quite understand that, but they do all the time. You know, they have sex parties and do all sorts of things that aren't allowed. I think a lot of Islam is just based on oppressing women. That's probably a Islamophobic thing to say, but I tell you, if there's any reason to actually be afraid of, that's a good religion to be afraid of. In this case, phobic actually means something. If you say anything against anyone gay ever, then apparently you're homophobic, which is stupid, because you may not have any phobia of gay people at all, but think that some gay people are stupid, which they are, because people are stupid. So anyway, it's just a problem with the suffix phobic. If you want to insult someone, you just toss phobic on the end of it, and it's like, well, yeah, there's stuff I'm afraid of. I'm statophobic. I'm afraid of the state. The state has the ability to control and kill me in any way it wishes, and I have no power. I'm bankophobic, you know. I'm phobic of all the shit that oppresses me. Kind of a tangent there. So back to designing a religion. You think about every aspect of culture and you wonder, should the religion dictate that? And I would recommend dictating as little as possible to leave as much freedom as possible. And that's at the religion level, right? Like diet. But even there, I mean, it's so tempting to dictate stuff because we're trying to design a better world. Like, for example, we could dictate only eat meat which was raised in good conditions and is fresh. It's grown, it's raised locally in good conditions. And that could be even a rule that people do break, because there are places where you can't do that. But we could change that. We could raise rabbits and chickens, and we can do things to support it. So that's what kind of rule? I mean, what do you call that kind of rule? Where it's not a sin to break it, but it's the goal, you know? And individual churches then could focus on raising rabbits and chickens and potentially emus, and that's a really cool bird, by the way, emus. They have big, I think it's a blue-green egg, and it's like a small ostrich, but not as mean. So you look at all the aspects of religion, and I think the real power of culture will be in the churches, because the churches could have all kinds of music, and they can share it. We could say as a church, we want to get away from copyrighted music. Don't use any copyrighted music in any church activities. That sounds pretty great. You know, that would free a lot of people up from the slavery of copyright. That sounds really cool. And we could have libraries of music available in all kinds of styles. You know, we could have reggae stuff. We could have Indian music. We can have world music and drumming and rock and roll and folk music. So those aren't the same as a rule. Like, what would be the rules that you would have that would get someone kicked out? Or I would say child abuse. I would say people abuse. If you have a continual abusiveness problem, then and it can't be worked out, right? You can try and help people, but if you can't work it out,